This presentation will be recorded for those of you listening in remotely. And I was just saying that the internet here is very spotty. When the internet shuts out, I will wait for purposes of the recording, and then once the internet comes back up, I'll resume speaking. For those of you who are just joining virtually, we now have 16 joined virtually. I would ask that you mute your microphones or you'll be speaking to the audience here. I also would ask that you turn off your cameras. All right. Let me talk fast before the internet goes out again. So my email address on the front page of my slides. These slides will be available to all of you. Please feel free to email me your questions. The live audience is going to get to ask some at the end of the presentation, but those of you who are logging in remotely, please feel free to email me your questions about anything in my presentation. I'm going to use this slide to introduce my research team. Dr. Dawn White has a PhD in psychology. She is a registered respiratory therapist with many, many years of patient care. And her husband, Dr. Tim White, has a doctorate in health science and a master's in business administration. Dr. Dawn White will be helping me with the psychological interviews and evaluations for the study. And Dr. Tim White and I will be performing the motor and physical evaluations for the study. You'll get to meet the Whites. They live in Chesapeake, Virginia, and you'll get to meet them virtually on Zoom. Okay, now my slides have caught up. There we go. So my disclosures, I'm an adjunct professor for 2 medical schools and 1 healthcare administration master's program. My medical schools have doctorates and PhDs, and I do work with a lot of physicians, nurse practitioners, and PAs as their professor. I've written 2 books. This group knows them well. You were with me when the first one was published, which is a family survival guide for the intensive care unit. And then the sequel book, Families in the Rehab Center, which is a survival guide for families through rehab and getting your person home and how to do that. I receive royalties from those books, and with my royalties, I'll treat you at Starbucks. My intellectual bias is I believe in the practice of LCHF. I'm going to call it LCHF throughout the presentation. It is a low-carb, healthy, fat nutritional approach, which is a ketogenic diet. I have used this particular approach widely for 7 years with myself and with my patients. I have 40 years of experience in healthcare, and 7 years ago was diagnosed with 5 medical conditions, was on 5 medications, and was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor. At that point, I decided I have to do something different. I was eating mostly a plant-based diet for many years, sort of pseudo-vegetarian, and decided that I had to do something different. So I ended up at the Mayo Clinic, and at the Mayo Clinic, they started talking about some of these new dietary approaches and mentioned the ketogenic diet. Being a professor at 2 medical schools, I'm in the research every day. So I began to research this approach and began to apply it to myself. And within a year, I was off all medications. And now, 7 years later, I have no medical conditions, no brain tumor. I'm powerlifting 2 to 3 times a week, 85 pounds, which is great for an old lady. And I'm dancing 2 times a week for a solid hour without stopping. So for me, it's just been an incredible ride. There it goes. My disclaimer is I am not providing you with individualized medical advice. For individualized medical advice, you need to consult your own doctor, and you need to follow what they tell you to do. That being said, what I do provide is to any doctor who wants it, I do provide a large bibliography of randomized controlled trial studies that they are welcome to review. Our doctors are wonderful. I work with many of them, but unfortunately, they did not get a lot of nutrition training in medical school, and they'll be the first ones to tell you that. Today, we're going to have the following objectives. We're going to explore the standard American diet. Interesting that it comes out with the acronym of SAD, the SAD diet, which is used in the USA since the 1970s. We're going to explore some of the historical facts and statistics on chronic disease changes in our food supply. We're going to explore some current research on a new dietary approach for addressing chronic disease, and we're exploring some of the facts and methods for Lchf Ketogenic Diet, specifically for this audience in neurodegenerative diseases, of which Parkinson's is one. The neurodegenerative diseases as a foundation for my use of that term: Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, and ALS. Those are the ones that are classified, and Huntington's chorea is also in there. Those are the major ones. So when I say neurodegenerative diseases, it's kind of encompassing all of those. We've received an ethics approval as of yesterday by the A.T. Still University Institutional Review Board out of Mesa, Arizona. We've been granted an international registry with the Biomedical Central Organization in compliance with World Health Organization guidelines. So this study is very well scrutinized and very well supported. I'm going to do a little history now, some of the facts. In 1977, the first USDA food pyramid was created. In 1978, Dr. Ansel Keys, who by the way was a fish biologist, did the 7-country cholesterol study, and his findings out of the 7 countries, even though he tested 23 countries, he only picked the 7 where his hypothesis was proven. Interestingly, the other countries that were studied disproved his cholesterol is bad hypothesis. However, the USDA actually created their food pyramid based on his research. Fish biologist, not a human biologist, a fish biologist. And he used only 7 of the countries that he studied. The other, whatever 23 minus 7 is, were not reported. In the late 1970s, interestingly, was the development of the first statin drugs. That's the Crestor, Pravastatin, those kinds of drugs. In the late 1970s, simultaneously with the creation of the food pyramid and the statin drug industry, began the sharp rise in type 2 diabetes, congestive heart failure, cerebral vascular disease, and neurodegenerative diseases. Interesting. Some more facts: type 2 diabetes statistics. These are 2015 statistics. They would be much different today. An estimated 1.5 million new cases of diabetes. And diabetes is now, and this is type 2. I won't be addressing type 1, although if you do have type 1 diabetes, I can speak with you separately on how we handle that. But type 2 diabetes, which is acquired, this diabetes diagnosis is acquired, begins as early as age 10. 2015, it said age 18. Now in 2020, the diagnosis of type 2 can begin as early as age 10. When you have type 2 diabetes, it puts you at greater risk of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's statistics: an estimated 7 to 10 million people worldwide have Parkinson's, and an estimated 4% of those folks are diagnosed before age 50. Alzheimer's disease, which wasn't even a diagnosis 15 to 20 years ago, but now it is. 5.6 million people age 65 and over. And a lot of, most of the people are diagnosed over 65. There are approximately 200,000 individuals per year that are diagnosed that are under 65. 1 in 10, this brings it down, 1 in 10 people age 65 and older have Alzheimer's disease. Remember, this was not even a diagnosis that we could make 15 to 20 years ago. Congestive heart failure statistics, 5 million Americans suffer from congestive heart failure. The longevity statistics for the US, we used to be ranked in the top 5. We are now 31st in the world for longevity. Our obesity statistics by the US government, 35% of people in 7 of our states are classified obese, 30% in 29 states, and 1/4 of all the people in 48 states are diagnosed with obesity. Our healthcare costs in 2017, so certainly in 2020, these will be more, was $3.5 trillion, or about $10,000 a person. Now those statistics are more like $15,000 per person. Here's some more facts gathered from the research. Type 2 diabetes is reversible. Newsflash, type 2 diabetes is now reversible. Chemotherapy has been used with the ketogenic diet for many years to enhance the effectiveness of chemotherapy in many cancers. That's something the oncologists have been using for years to enhance chemotherapy. Symptoms of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and MS can actually be reduced through diet. We know that's true. And guess what? Another news flash, medications don't fix health. They manage symptoms, but they don't get to the root causes of some of your health conditions. One of the doctors that I listened to in the Nutrition Network had a fabulous talk on diabetes, and his quote, and for some reason his name is escaping me at the moment, his quote was, "Good health makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make anybody a lot of dollars." So I want you to think about that quote. Now, initially in this talk, I had intermediate to advanced biochemistry throughout the talk, and I thought, okay, that'll be great. You all will be asleep by my 4th slide. So what I decided is I was listening to another lecture on the Nutrition Network, which is an organization that I've achieved my 1st level certification through. They are based out of South Africa. They're an international organization. He had a fabulous analogy on biochemistry using a train. And I thought, this is going to illustrate what I'm talking about so beautifully. So let's look at this train. This train is at the station. It's early morning. The train is your liver and your fat cells. Okay, so think of that train, pretty empty. Now there's a little bit of sugar floating in your bloodstream. That's these people waiting on the platform. Not a lot, nobody's in a big hurry, your train's kind of empty, that's great. You're waking up in the morning. Now, the people represent the sugar. So this early morning train, there's a few people at the platform in your bloodstream. There's a little bit of sugar. You have to have a little bit, about a teaspoonful, to keep your body functioning. So early morning, you're in good shape. Your liver's good, it's empty, your fat cells are good, you got a little bit of sugar floating in your bloodstream, a few people on your platform. The pushers. So the pushers are insulin and medications. Insulin is a natural hormone in your body. Our body uses it to regulate the sugar in our vessels. The human body cannot tolerate more than 1 teaspoon of sugar in your bloodstream. So insulin and any medications you take, their job is to shove that sugar out of your bloodstream fast as you can. too much sugar in your bloodstream and you're in a coma. So the insulin and medications you take are shoving the sugar into your liver, shoving the sugar into your fat cells. They got to get it out of the bloodstream. So the pushers are naturally occurring insulin hormone, and then any medications you take that address your blood sugar. Metformin is a popular one. Here are the US Dietary Guidelines. So the US Dietary Guidelines tell you to eat more carbs, right? Low fat, don't eat any meat, eat a lot of carbs. This is what your train looks like now, or your platform looks like now. You haven't even eaten breakfast yet. This is what your platform will look like after you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How are you going to get all those people on the train? Your body's got to get them out of your vessels. They've got to get the blood sugar out of your vessels. Well, because your vessels can only hold 1 teaspoon. 1 total teaspoon of sugar in your blood at any given time. This is your breakfast. So your first stop, your train's going to stop at the breakfast station. And this is an example of a healthy breakfast. Yogurt and assorted fruit, there's your 29 plus teaspoons of sugar. Fresh squeezed orange juice, this is the fresh squeezed kind. 13 teaspoons of sugar. So your total healthy breakfast is now over 41 teaspoons of sugar. Now remember, your bloodstream can only handle 1 teaspoon. What are you going to do with all that sugar? You got to do something with it. Your body has to, or you will end up in a coma and die. Second stop, let's eat a breakfast, a lunch. What's the typical American lunch, right? Hamburger, fries, large soda, or a regular shake. 68 plus teaspoons of sugar. So now you had 41 from breakfast, you've got 68 plus from lunch. You cannot allow all that sugar to float in your bloodstream. So your pancreas is cranking out the insulin like mad, getting those pushers to push that sugar into your liver, into your fat cells. Got to get it out. So you're just hyperloading your pancreas, more insulin, more insulin. Your poor beta cells are working overtime, and you've just gotten to lunch. Look at that. So by lunchtime, actually, even after breakfast for most of us that are over 50, where's all this sugar going to go? Where are you going to put all these people? Your train is already packed full. What are you going to do with all this sugar in your bloodstream? Bring in more pushers. Come on, we got to push these people in this train. We got to do everything we can to get this sugar out of the bloodstream or you're going to die. So it's push, push, push. More insulin, more insulin. Your doctor says, increase your metformin, increase your injectable insulin, eat 6 small meals a day. So we got more pushers, more pushers. Now we're at the healthy dinner station. What are you going to do with this sugar from your healthy dinner? You got to do something with it, right? This is an example. This is Dr. Unwin, who's a fabulous person to listen to on YouTube. He is a British medical doctor, and he has created these food charts, which I think are quite informational. These food charts are actually used widely on the many medical sites. So just a slice of white bread, not bad, right? That's got almost 4 teaspoons of sugar in 1 slice of white bread. Regardless, thinking about the jelly you put on it, right? Now, interesting, what would you think would be healthier, whole grain bread or white bread? Whole grain. Look at whole grain. Almost 6 teaspoons of sugar. You know why? Grain tastes like cardboard. So in order to make whole grain bread palatable, they add sugar to it. Otherwise, none of us would eat it. right? Everybody thinks, well, oatmeal. Oatmeal's healthy. Now, this is a half a cup of oatmeal. What's a half a cup? Not very much. How many of us eat a half a cup of oatmeal? Not many. Well, that's got almost 4 teaspoons of sugar in it, regardless of the sugar you put on it, right? I mean, this is giving you an idea of what we're eating. Let's look at healthy fruit. A banana. This almost goes off the chart. But I gotta have my potassium. No, because the potassium in the banana is completely canceled out by the fact that it's got 6 teaspoons of sugar in it, right? Now go on down the list. Strawberries aren't bad. Strawberries aren't bad. The berries aren't too bad. But all of this other fruit, you're just adding sugar to your bloodstream, pushing people on that train, right? By now, your poor liver, and you've just had 1 day of 3 meals, your poor liver is really struggling. Healthy vegetables. Potato, a baked potato, almost 10 teaspoons of sugar in a baked potato. Now, let me tell you that your body does not know the difference between an apple and a Snickers bar. Your body does not know the difference between a potato and a Kit Kat bar. You might as well have had the donut. You know what I mean? So look at raisins, any of your dried fruit. So dried fruit, supposed to be healthy. Dried raisins has over 10 teaspoons of sugar. This is 1 serving. This is teeny. None of us have 1 serving of raisins, right? I think it's a tablespoon. All right, but the strawberries aren't too bad, right? So remember, to your liver, sugar is sugar. They don't care if it's an apple. It doesn't care if it's a Snickers bar. Sugar is sugar to your liver. Here you are, the end of that day. This is called the Fatty Liver Express. So now your poor liver has been overloaded with 1 day of healthy meals, and there you are. These are the USDA Dietary Guidelines, and I am not overstating this. No wonder we now, in the last 10 years, have the new diagnosis of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. Prior to 10 years ago, it wasn't a diagnosis, and guess what? 10-year-olds are now being diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Before, we only had the diagnosis of cirrhosis, which is when you drink alcohol too much, right? Now, we have to have a new diagnosis because of our dietary habits here in the United States and worldwide. So what does your doctor recommend? You got the fatty liver express, you got all this high blood sugar floating around, your liver's sick, you're obese because now you've had to shove sugar into your fat cells. Increase your medications. That's what we need to do for you. You got more metformin, right? Or maybe your Parkinson's is out of control because all this sugar floating in your bloodstream causes inflammation. Do our brains need any more inflammation? No. So your doctor says, we'll fix you. We'll just give you more meds. Hire more pushers. Let's push those people in that liver, push that sugar out of the bloodstream. I love nutritionists. I am not casting disparagement on nutritionists, but what is their recommendation? Eat 6 small meals a day. Stop more often. Stop at more stations. Stop your train at more stations. Take on more people at those stations. Okay. Bring in more pushers for each of those stations. So now instead of 3 meals a day, you're eating 6. Okay. Is that fixing your problem? So the answer is we need more trains. So more trains mean now we're all obese, we have more fat cells. So we can push those people into more trains, just get more trains on the scene. Has that fixed the problem? We have non-fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Hire more pushers, let's up those medications, let's increase your Parkinson's meds, let's increase your congestive heart failure meds, let's get those diuretics on board, try to flush out your system. And I am not anti-medication, but I do believe in smart medication prescription. Logical solutions, possible ones? Let's have fewer people getting on our train. What do you think? Can we have fewer people getting on our train? Eat less carbs and sugar. What does that sound like? Fewer stops. Well, whoever said we need to eat 6 times a day? Whoever said we need to eat 3 times a day? Nobody. Our ancestors didn't eat 3 times a day. They were lucky to have 1 good meal a day, right? What about all these snacks? It's like everybody has to have a snack. What is that about? Our children do not need snacks. All we're doing is we're pushing that blood sugar into their livers. More people need to get off our train, right? Here I put get more exercise. That'll help. But I have other ways to get more people off that train. Let's hire some more workers. Let's fix these trains. Let's make them more efficient. Let's fix our train tracks, which are our blood vessels. So HDL cholesterol, they're the good guys. They're the repairmen. They go out there and try to fix those trains. They repair your train tracks, which are your blood vessels. Let's make some more efficient trains. Let's build our muscles. Let's exercise. All right, so there's some things we can do to fix this problem. Now, these are the new guidelines that your doctor is using to assess whether you have metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is a brand new diagnosis that we didn't have, and now we have it, and it involves these things. High triglycerides, it's above 100. Low HDL, they're the good guys, that's the good cholesterol. A large waist circumference. For men, it's over 40 inches. For women, it's over 35. High blood pressure and high blood sugar. That's hemoglobin A1C above 5.5. Now, what I want you to see is what's missing on this list. Does anybody see LDL anywhere? LDL cholesterol is not anywhere on this list, but guess what? That's the only thing that statins fix. So why are we taking medications that fix something that isn't even a part of chronic disease? Doesn't make any sense to me, but anyway. What does LCHF fix? This is interesting. Well, it actually raises the good guys, gets your good cholesterol up. Okay, we can start repairing things in the vessels, right? It lowers your triglycerides, and guess what? Triglycerides are a reflection of how much carb and sugar you eat. That's what your triglycerides measure. They do not measure the fats you eat. That is completely been disproven. Triglycerides are a reflection of how many carbs and sugar foods you eat. It also decreases blood pressure. I was on 3 blood pressure medications for many years, and I'm not on any. It decreases abdominal fat. That's that fat from which you become diabetic, you have congestive heart failure. There's a lot that's caused by large abdominal fat. And it decreases your blood sugar. So guess what? You don't need medications to control your sugar. Your diet controls your sugar. What a novel concept. Let's use something natural. Here's the results of our last 50 years of medical advice and nutritional advice. Now, I'm in the medical profession, so I am not casting disparagement on my colleagues, but what I'm saying is you have to stay up on the research. You have to be current on what's happening in the research. And since that's what I do for a living, and poor doctors, they're just trying to see 40 people a day, I recognize that they may not be up on the nutritional research. Personal story, went to a new primary care doctor 6 years ago after I'd been on keto for a year. And he said, "You're the healthiest, 50-something-year-old I've ever seen." And I said, "Well, that's because I follow the ketogenic diet." He got very interested. Every time I had a visit with him, which wasn't much, I'd hand him a stack of research articles. He read every one of them. Well, unfortunately, I had him so well trained that he left medical practice and went into nutrition research. Well, that's what happens when you convince them and they get all excited. In 2008, a primary care physician in Sweden was sued by 2 registered dietitians for recommending LCHF for her patients. You can find this stuff on YouTube. As part of the trial, the Swedish government did an exhaustive review of the literature. They're called meta-analyses, and they take hundreds of studies, they gather them together, and they look at the results of each of the studies. They found that LCHF is viable and a healthy dietary recommendation. Therefore, in Sweden, they recommend the LCHF diet. And guess what? Sweden has the lowest healthcare costs in the world. Wow, is that a coincidence? The same thing, by the way, has happened in South Africa. As a result of a trial, these doctors are being sued. They come forward with the evidence. The government realizes, yeah, if we can fix people, we can fix our healthcare costs. In the 1940s to the 1970s, what our grandparents ate, some of us, they were low in processed foods, low in carbs, high in meat, fish, poultry, eggs, and dairy, vegetables, and seasonal fruits. Now, let me tell you why fruit only comes ripe in the fall. Now, we're getting our fruit from all over the world now, right? But local fruit here in Colorado, I can guarantee you, is not coming ripe until about now. Now, why is that? Because the good Lord knew what he was doing. Fruit comes ripe in the fall so we can put on fat for the winter. That's what our ancestors did. That's what our grandparents did. They didn't have a lot of fruit through the year, but they ate it September, October, November, getting ready for that cold weather to have that layer of fat so they could get through the winter. That's why. They didn't have fruit every day. Guess what? We don't need fruit every day. The 1970s to the present has been the US food pyramid. Now our diets are high in processed foods. They're all boxed and packaged, right? And there was a low fat craze. So you take the fat out of a food, it tastes like cardboard. What do you have to do to make people buy it? You have to add sugar to it. Read a label on something that you think doesn't have sugar in it, and there it is. The 1980s to present, guess what? Increases in all chronic diseases, including diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, MS, Huntington's. Is that a coincidence? In the 1970s, one of the reasons the US government was recommending commodity foods, which is grains, corn, and wheat, is because they had an excess of them. They had warehouses full of this stuff, and they had to figure out how to get rid of it. So they put it on the food pyramid, so you would buy it. That's the way to get rid of excesses, surpluses, right? Here's a historical fact. Anybody ever use Crisco to cook with? Guess what it's made from? It's made from cottonseed oil that was used to oil industrial machinery. And when tech began to develop, they had a surplus of this cottonseed oil. What do you do with it? And of course, cottonseed oil is a byproduct of the cotton industry, right? So what do we do with it? We make food with it. That's what we do with it, and we sell it to you guys, and you cook with it. So you're eating industrial oil. That's what you're eating. Did you know that 1977 US Food Pyramid and more recently their My Plate version of it are the same pyramids used in the livestock industry to fatten pigs, sheep, and cattle? Did you know that? It's the same one they use. You put them side by side, they're identical. Question, how long do livestock in our livestock food industry live? I can tell you a normal steer, they'll be butchered in about 12 to 13 months. And when they are butchered to get that great marbling, they're all diabetic. Bottom line, high carb diets are designed to fatten livestock. That's what they're for. As of 2018, now if you're not going to believe me, and that's fine, you don't know who I am, you don't have to believe me, but what do you think about the American Diabetes Association? You think that might be a credible organization? Well, as of 2018, Lchf ketogenic diets are now in their guidelines because they have found through the research that you can reduce medications for diabetes drastically or possibly cure it. So if the American Diabetes Association is recommending it, you don't have to listen to me. Go on their website, check out their guidelines. 2000 to the present, studies showed that our new recruits for military service were not healthy enough to serve. The VA began to be really worried that we weren't going to have a fighting force. Our young people getting drafted for military service weren't healthy enough to make it. So the VA, now if you're not going to believe me, would you believe the VA? Maybe. 2017, added Lchf ketogenic diets to their guidelines. Now, what about the American College of Physicians? Would you believe that group? Maybe. In 2018, the American College of Physicians did a full analysis of all recommended diets. Lchf ranked #1 among all the recommended diets. This is the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, you know, all these things that you've heard for improving health. That is now in the American College of Physicians guidelines. How about NASA? Anybody want to believe NASA over me? And that's fine because I would believe NASA over me. Since 2009, NASA's known Lchf was good. They use it for their astronauts. They've done some testing on something called oxygen toxicity seizures, OTS. It's experienced not only by astronauts, but by deep divers, Navy SEALs particularly. And they have begun to use, or they started in 2009, so how many years ago was that, using Lchf ketogenic diets to protect these people from seizures. If a Navy SEAL, before the ketogenic diet, was exposed to high oxygen environments within 10 minutes, he's experiencing life-threatening seizures, and astronauts as well. Now, when they're in a state of nutritional ketosis as a result of the ketogenic diet, they can stay in those environments for up to 60 minutes of exposure without a seizure. So guess what this NASA research found? Nutritional ketosis is neuroprotective. It protects your brain. That just totally made me realize we have to do this study. If it protects your brain, we have to see how it helps with Parkinson's. Now, audience participation, and you got to shout it out. If you are gluten intolerant, you avoid gluten. Just shout it out. If you are lactose intolerant, you avoid. If you're allergic to seafood, you avoid. If you're carb intolerant, type 2 diabetes, obese, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, you avoid. Makes a lot of sense to me. Again, this is our SAD diet, our standard American diet, mostly boxed, packaged foods. It's high fat plus high sugar. See, that's where high fat got a bad name. They forgot to say, oh yeah, it's in combination with high sugar that's the problem. It's fast foods. I'll bet it's what you're eating now. Here's the old food pyramid. Did you ever know that they actually put sugar in the pyramid? This is what you're recommended to eat. Now I want you to see that 2/3 of this pyramid is all sugar. We don't hit any meats until near the top. And guess what? You're supposed to have added sugar according to this pyramid. You've seen it. And now they put it in my plate, so it's a little harder to see. And we talked about the obesity rates, 35%. Guess what? Humans were never designed or created to handle grains, sugar. We're not created to handle that. And guess what? We found years ago, fats don't make you fat. It's not the fats that are the problem. People are advised to eat low fat and high carbs, fruits and grains. How many of you have oatmeal and a banana for breakfast? That was my standard breakfast. And the inclusion of high fructose corn syrup in every food item has brought about the diagnosis of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and has exponentially increased all the neurodegenerative diseases. And guess what's in the juices our babies and toddlers are drinking? The Lchf diet is so effective that those with diabetes must cut their insulin in half in the first week. They must, because it fixes it. And if you're taking your insulin to control your sugar, you're going to bottom your sugar out and you're going to end up in the ER. That's just the way it is. So what do I eat on this thing? Easy. Meat, fish, poultry, eggs. No dairy for those with Parkinson's. There is some research that indicates a dairy connection. It's not strong research, but in our study, we're not going to do any dairy or recommend any dairy. Fats, 70 to 80%, protein, 15 to 20%. You see, it's not a high protein diet, is it? And those with Parkinson's worry about that, and I get it. It totally interferes with your Cinemet, your carbidopa. It's not a high protein diet. And carbs, less than 10%, 5 to 10%. Only the green veggies, only the green ones, and guess what? Snow peas are not a vegetable. They're a starch. So only the green ones. The only oils we recommend are coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, grass-fed butter, beef tallow, and lard. How many of your grandparents, grandmothers cooked with lard? I mean, it was, yeah, that was what they cooked with. This is recommended for those on chemotherapy. It's recommended for those with seizures. In fact, the ketogenic diet, since the 60s, has been used to control seizures in children with epilepsy. It has a higher effectiveness rate than the anti-epileptic medications. And you got to drink water like there's no tomorrow, because your body's going to be flushing your poor liver, your poor train that is overloaded with people. Here's the Lchf pyramid. And at first glance, what do you see? It's completely turned upside down, except there aren't any breads on it, right? No breads and grains. So this is the pyramid that we use when we're doing the ketogenic diet. Nuts and berries, yeah, you can have nuts and berries, but they're at the very top, so don't overdo it. Salads and veggies, those are the green ones. Eggs and cheese, but of course for Parkinson's, we're not going to do any dairy. Meat, fish, poultry. Does this look like cardboard to anybody? People go, I can't eat the ketogenic diet. It's just all that yucky food. Well, I don't see any yucky food on there. I eat a steak just about every day. That's not yucky food. Salmon, trout, and then all of these good fats at the bottom. So if you take the standard food pyramid, turn it on its head, that's the Lchf pyramid. It's not high protein. Don't be afraid of fats. Guess what? Your brain is 85% cholesterol. Did you know that? And it's interesting to me when we went on all these low cholesterol, low fat diets, our neurodegenerative diseases took off. Coincidence? Nutritional ketosis protects the brain, as we found in the NASA study. NASA's not a shabby organization. They have some pretty high-powered research going on there. Ketones that your body generates as a result of this diet are like jet fuel for the brain. It gives your brain more energy. The problem with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, ALS is that your brain isn't getting the correct energy to the correct places in the correct amounts, right? And your brain is very inflamed. So let's give your brain the help it needs. Let's give it the fuel that it needs. It's all about giving your brain the fuel it needs to preserve your cognition, to preserve your brain function, preserve your memory. They found all this on PET scans. It's all documented. And a lot of the research coming out of Canada is quite good. Okay, we've talked about this. There are also keto supplements, but I would recommend that the keto supplements don't work well if you're on a standard American diet. Why would it? But there has been some research with the keto diet and these supplements having a big benefit to the brain. Mct oils. Those of you who are in this group have heard Dr. Bruce Fife speak on the benefits of coconut oil because it's very naturally medium chain triglycerides, which feed your brain directly. Here's an interesting fact. So you're not going to believe me or NASA or the American College of Physicians, or you're not going to believe the American Diabetes Association. What about God? Would you believe him? So guess what? Babies are born in nutritional ketosis. Why is that? What do babies need to do? They need to protect their brains. They need to grow their brains, right? They need to be in the best shape of their lives to do all their development. Those of you who've had kids, oh my goodness, they're rolling over today. Oh my goodness, they're sitting up today. Those brains are growing exponentially. Guess what breast milk is? 80% fat, 15% protein, and 5% carbohydrate. That's not me saying it. That's the research saying it. Now, why would God create breast milk to be the perfect ketogenic food if it wasn't important? Here's our study. So this study is going to be a quasi-experimental pre-test, post-test, one-group epidemiological study. I specialize in population health research. This is not a randomized controlled trial, because to do that, I would have to lock you all in a room for 12 weeks and give you nothing but the food I give you. Well, And I couldn't do that to you. So this is a population health study. It's a nutritional approach on the treatment of symptoms of Parkinson's disease using the UPDRS scores, which you guys have all had by your neurologists. Major blood markers of metabolic health. We're going to be testing your BMI, your weight, your hemoglobin A1C, your insulin, triglycerides, and HDL, and symptoms of depression and anxiety, which are huge in Parkinson's. You know, dopamine's that feel-good chemical. And if your dopamine's impaired, you're going to have some depression and anxiety. We want to see if this helps. This study has been created in collaboration with Dr. Matthew Phillips in New Zealand. He and I have been in contact. He conducted the same study in 2018 with people with Parkinson's disease, found some really good results. And so he and I have been consulting on the study design, and he is allowing us to use all of his study materials. He's been amazing. For those with diabetes, we've already talked about the importance of adjusting your medications. Therefore, for those with diabetes who want to participate in this study, you're going to have to be in close contact with your doctor, and your doctor has to be willing to teach you how to adjust your medications. Because if you keep using the same, you pop in that same metformin pill, you're going to end up in the ER because your body doesn't need it. So I'm going to be pretty strict with those with diabetes who participate in this study. Those of you with diabetes who take insulin, you know that if you test your sugar and it's below 120, you don't take any insulin. Well, I'm telling you, on this diet, your sugar won't be much above 100. So if you keep popping these, taking this insulin, doing your injectable, it's almost life-threatening. Dr. Westman out of Duke University is another one that I have studied with. He actually runs a nutrition clinic out of Duke where they recommend this diet. They're fixing many, many health problems there. Ours is a unique approach. We're going to Zoom with you for your first appointment. You're going to go and get your blood work drawn. We're paying, CPF is paying for all that. And we're going to Zoom with you, get these baseline interviews done. You're going to do the diet for 12 weeks. I'm going to be Zooming with you for 12 weeks and answering emails and on the phone. And then at the end of 12 weeks, you're going to get all that blood drawn again. And we're going to collect all your information, and we're going to do those scales again. Now, the scales we're using are very widely used with Parkinson's. In fact, the Parkinson's anxiety scale was completely supported and researched in 2019, and we're using that one. It's a Parkinson's specific anxiety scale. The CESDR depression scale has also been widely used in people with Parkinson's. All right, the blood work. We are working in collaboration with LabCorp. There are 6 or 8 LabCorp sites in the Colorado Springs area. And basically, you grab the paperwork I give you, you walk in, they draw your blood, you walk out. It's just that easy. Also, Dr. Dawn White, our PhD psychologist, is going to be doing the depression and anxiety interviews on Zoom. This is all Zoom. You can do it from the privacy of your own home. You don't have to have contact with anyone. Thank you, COVID. The one thing I'm going to ask my participants to do is you're going to test your blood weekly. CPF, in their fabulous research oriented, what am I saying? I'm saying that they are committed to research. They are going to provide you with a glucose ketone meter. I'm going to teach you how to use it. And you're going to test your blood ketones and glucose once a week for me. I was going to have you test it daily. Didn't know if you guys wanted to be pin cushions throughout the 12 weeks. So I'm going to give you a break and you're going to test it once a week in a fasted state. In other words, you have to have fasted 4 hours. And generally what that means is you wake up in the morning before you eat anything and you test your blood. Or you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. and before you eat lunch at 12, you test your blood. I just have to have a 4-hour window. And then you're going to write those numbers down for me. So yeah, you're going to have to prick your finger once a week, but we're providing the strips, we're providing the meters, which is pretty phenomenal. This recruitment presentation is going to be made available on a link on the website. You can access it. Anybody, anywhere in the world can access it. And if anybody has a LabCorp in their city, they can participate in this study. I'm really hoping we get people from all over the nation is what I'm hoping. All of my communication with you is going to be via an email, Zoom. I'm going to be sending you educational videos. It'll be, in fact, COVID has had some benefits for this study. I can be in more contact with you using Zoom. Now I wanted to say, CPF is so fabulous that if anyone listening to this presentation does not typically have a computer or internet, CPF has got that covered. They're going to provide one for you. They're going to help you get on. They're going to help you access it. So we got that handled. Anybody who doesn't have email, I'm going to be snail mailing you packets of information. Here are the variables we're testing: hemoglobin A1C, your BMI, your HDL, C-reactive protein, which is a measure of total body inflammation. We're going to see if we get that inflammation factor coming down, which directly influences your brain, fasting insulin, triglycerides, and then the UPDRS, depression, anxiety. We're going to be collecting your ketone and blood sugar logs, and then you're going to do a food log for me about what you're eating. You can do that on paper, or you can use the MyFitnessPal app. It's free online. Here are the precautions. We've already talked about diabetes. I've drilled that. Those with congestive heart failure, you watch your salt intake, but if you get rid of salt altogether, you may have lots of leg cramps. So LCHF is so good about flushing those kidneys, you may be flushing what little bitty salt you do have. So then I recommend some bouillon. You put a teaspoon of salt in your water for leg cramps. I'm going to want everybody to take some potassium each day and some magnesium. Those things are going to also help your muscles, your leg cramps, as you get used to all of this. The reason I'm saying leg cramps is because all of us are used to eating no salt. And guess what? The new recommendation for salt intake on those without congestive heart failure is 5 teaspoons a day. That's the new recommendation. Now, what have we been told for 30 years? No salt, no salt, no salt. Well, now we have people in their 40s with stage 3 kidney disease. Well, I wonder what that's about. Your Parkinson's meds, you already know about adjusting those according to any proteins, but I'm telling you, you may not need as much. And what I hope is happening, and this is a pretty savvy group, is that you're looking at your symptoms and you're adjusting your meds. I'm hoping nobody's just popping the same dose all the time as a matter of course. We shouldn't be doing that with any medication. So you're going to find some changes in your symptoms. You need to be ready to adjust those meds. Some people with Parkinson's who are on high doses of meds may see some feeling not so great the first week or so. Give it time, push through it. Your body's going to have to adjust. Now, if you start the diet and you're adding coconut oil and you get diarrhea, back off on the oil a little bit, build up slowly. It's your body getting used to it. If you've been eating a certain way for 50 years, 60 years, you got to give your body a chance. That's why this study is 12 weeks long. If you have any issues, you must consult your physician. Tell them what you're on, tell them what you're doing. They're going to be the ones to adjust your medications. That's not me. The study is intended as a pilot study to identify the trends in the application of this approach to the treatment of Parkinson's symptoms and effects on general health markers. Additionally, we're going to be looking at nutritional effects on psychological symptoms such as depression and anxiety. All right, I think I talked fast and got through all of it. I'm going to open it up now for questions here from the audience. Those of you logging in from remote locations, feel free to email me your questions on my email, melanietidman@gmail.com. It's at the beginning of these slides. We're going to now open it up for questions, and I will remember to repeat the question. It may be a question that you have in the online audience. And there are now, for the group here, 17 participating remotely. So that's really awesome. All right, opening it up for questions. Yes. So right. So the question came from this gentleman that he's been told this, he's been told that. Yes, drink milk, no drink milk. Yes, take aspirin, don't, yes, drink coffee. Yes, eat eggs, don't eat eggs. So what makes me think that this is the answer, this diet? Several things. One, my own personal experience, and any physician who recommends something for you that they have not done on themselves, I wouldn't follow it, my own personal. Two, I consult pro bono with 40 patients nationwide. We do it over Zoom. And 39 of them have improved their health dramatically or off all their medications. So that's another body of evidence. Three, it's not only the research that I read and study and my certifications with the International Nutrition Network out of South Africa, but it's now the American College of Physicians, the American Diabetes Association, the VA, and NASA, and all the research coming out of those places, which I think are very credible and reputable research institutions. So those four things convinces me that this is the answer. It's also the research that I'm doing. I feel like the reason I'm doing this is I believe in the approach so much. And what I'm hoping you can show me as a result of your participation in this study is more information about how this benefits Parkinson's. Now, for those in last year's study, in our exercise study, I forgot to mention, and I want to be sure to mention it. That study article was published in February of 2020. It is now the foundational research study for 20 other studies in Parkinson's. These are global studies. We have a global registry on this study. So those of you who are participated last year in that exercise study that wasn't easy, you now have the legacy of contributing to the research to help people with Parkinson's all over the world. Those things are the things that convince me. I agree with what you're saying. The interesting thing is the world ate this way prior to about the mid to late 70s. And look at when we started eating a different way, our health has gone down. And then for me, I'm going to believe God above all. So if he's creating babies to be in ketosis and eat keto, I guess I kind of believe that that's probably a really healthy way to do diet. So all of those things. Excellent question. Agree with you. My usual advice is Try it. Try it. If you try it and you're strict and you do it to the best of your ability for 2 weeks and you don't see any difference, or even 4 weeks for those of us who have some other health conditions, if you don't see any benefit whatsoever, then I would tell you, don't do it. I am not naive enough to think that a plant-based diet doesn't benefit some people. It does. And I'm not saying everybody in the world needs to eat this way, but what I'm saying is, if what you're doing isn't working, what is Einstein's definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. If you're getting sicker and fatter and on more medications, doing what you're doing, what do you have to lose, really? Okay, there was a question here. So with the ketogenic diet, calories are not an issue. Calories are not considered, and I'll tell you why. The ketogenic diet is so nutritionally satisfying that your body adjusts its own calories. It will self-adjust because it's so satisfying to keep your calorie intake how it needs to be. All of this is ad lib. I'm not telling you 3 ounces of this and a half a cup of that, and calorie limitation diets have not worked. The reason they haven't worked is we've been eating carbs and we're starving. I don't know any of you, but if I even have a salad with no fat and no protein, I'm hungry in 2 hours. We're all hungry. That's why we're snacking so much. So no calories are considered. As far as the individualized diet, I will give you Dr. Phillips' book. You get his book, and it tells you exactly what to do. You're going to be getting so much education, but I'm all about individual choice. If I choose your breakfast and you don't like it, how likely are you to stay with it? Probably not. But if I tell you, I want you to have these foods for breakfast however you want, then you're going to comply with that. And that's what we found, is that if I design exactly, you're going to have this for breakfast and this for lunch and this for dinner, people don't stick with it. You can. You can gain weight on this diet. And initially, some of you might. And initially, some of you probably need to. And then you start adjusting. So yes, the answer to both of those. Yes, you can gain some weight on this diet till you kind of get it adjusted, till your body adjusts. So some people, most people, 90% of people lose weight on this diet if they need to lose weight. So yeah, you got to work with that. And the beauty of being in this study is you lose 5 pounds, you can't afford to lose 5 pounds, you email me, we set up a Zoom, I look at what you're eating, I make adjustments. You gain 5 pounds, you don't want to gain 5 pounds, we Zoom together, I individually adjust it. But initially you're going to get the packet of information. Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh. So the question is about the connection between dairy and Parkinson's. There have been some studies that talk about the additives in dairy. It's not, raw dairy products are probably fine, but you have to find raw, which is hard to find in some states because it's banned, grass-fed dairy, and it's hard to find. There have been some studies that have shown a connection between the additives. There have been some studies that have shown the connection between the homogenization process and Parkinson's, because it removes all of the beneficial bacterias that actually the human body needs. You know, the reason pasteurization was created is because of an outbreak of something. I don't remember if it was E. coli many years ago. But the reason that I'm omitting all dairy from this diet, from this study, is because there is a connection. It's not a firm connection, it's not a causal connection, but there is a connection. Yeah, I mean, basically, if you're in the study, oh, her question was, we're gonna have to give up yogurt for 12 weeks. And basically, because all yogurt is sugar, yeah, if you're in the study, you're gonna contract with me, agree with me, that you're gonna eat what I'm giving you the list to eat of accepted foods. Because if you're cheating, you're not gonna have the results, and I'm not gonna be able to tell what benefited you. I know it's really hard at first. I was a big bread person. I made my own bread for my family for many years, 20 years, 30 years, I don't know. And giving up homemade bread, yeah, it's tough. But you know, after you give it up and you see the benefit, I always tell my patients with diabetes this as we've just cut off their leg and I'm trying to get them up. Would you have rather had your leg and not done the donut? I mean, that's what it comes down to me. And I'm a zealot. You can tell I'm very passionate about this approach. It fixed my own health. It's fixed many of my patients' health. And so I'm a purist. I'm very strict. My family actually laughs at me because I'm so strict. But I'm 63 years old. Those of you who want to know how old I am. And I'm in much better shape than I ever was in my 30s. So there was a question here. I wanted to get her real quick. Excellent, about weight. And for many people with Parkinson's, you need to put on a little. I mean, you're probably underweight. This will help with that. But individualizing, I'll be doing that with my people in this study. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she was commenting that even plain yogurt is loaded with sugar. You think you're doing good for your health and you're going plain? No, they've got to put sugar in it to make it palatable. If any of you have ever made your own yogurt from raw cow's milk, you can hardly choke it down. It's pretty gross. So yeah, they add sugars to it. So yeah, there'll be things you'll need to give up for 12 weeks. Yeah, over here. So, yeah. Really good question. So the question was about the ketogenic diet we're going to be using for this study. And the strictest ketogenic diet for people with epilepsy, it's 90% fats. They really go up on the fats. The goal is to get into nutritional ketosis, thus the meters that we're going to be giving you to test your ketone levels. It's the ketones that are created by the fats you eat that feed your brain. So yes, that is our goal. We're going to be tracking that. Another thing that your weekly finger prick can tell me is how closely you're sticking with the diet. If you're not sticking with the diet so good, it's going to show up on your blood readings. And then I need to contact you. We need to see if, what we can do to adjust your diet. The beauty of this, rather than even the face-to-face study we were going to do, I don't live here, I live in Albuquerque, is now I get to do individualized meetings with all of you whenever you want. You can, I'm your PhD on call here. So yes, the goal is to get into nutritional ketosis. That's the key. Ketosis will fix a lot of the biochemical issues that are happening in the body. It will give your brain that jet fuel that it needs. It will help to detoxify your liver. And I'm guaranteeing you, anybody who has not eaten this way has some fatty liver disease. I'll kind of guarantee that. By the way, Duke University just conducted a study where they took 1,000 people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, put them on this diet in 10 days, 92% of them did not have it anymore. This is 10 days. You see how powerful this is? So it's this research that I'm reading, and this is quality research. This is research in the American Journal of Medicine. These are not fly by night in these obscure journals you've never heard of. So yes, nutritional ketosis is the key. Yes. So the reason they're called carbohydrate is because, what's the difference between carbs and sugar? What is the, chemically, there is no difference. There is no chemical difference. The only difference in added sugars is they have two parts, fructose and sucrose. That's table sugar. Carbohydrates can have many different kinds of sugars in them, but biochemically, they're not that different. And so the body doesn't recognize the difference. Now, if you're reading a label, a cereal label, and it says X protein and X calories and X carbs and X sugar, the food companies knew that they had to split that out because none of us are smart enough to know that carbs are sugar. So instead of 38 grams of carbs and 12 grams of sugar, it would all be, 50 grams of sugar. And so the food industry decided, people aren't going to like that. And so they broke it out. But biochemically, the way the body handles it, it's the same. So when you see carbohydrate, you read sugar. It's the reason we're in the mess we're in. As I said earlier, your liver doesn't know the difference between a Snickers bar and an apple. It handles it the same way. The apple, it may even handle worse because it has a lot of fructose in it. You want to hear the war on fructose, listen to Dr. Robert Lustig on YouTube, and he is the world's leading authority on sugar in the diet and what it has done to our health. But that's a really good question. Yes. Handle at a time. Right. So the question is, the 1 teaspoon of sugar that floats in our bloodstream always floats in our bloodstream. It always has to float there. That's the minimum that our body needs to function. Our body does need some glucose to function. It really does. But what we like to do is create that glucose naturally so that our body is used to handling that. It has to shove everything more into the tissues. But it always maintains, our bodies are really good. It's called the Law of Homeostasis. Our bodies are really good at maintaining what they need to function, that little balance. So if you didn't have that 1 teaspoon of free-floating sugar, you'd be in a coma and probably die. So what we don't want is 68 teaspoons of sugar flowing in our bloodstream. And then what happens? Our vessels get inflamed. When they're inflamed, our body sends plaques to repair the damage in our vessels. And the rest is heart attack in the future, stroke in the future. It's the only time that our body lays down plaque in our vessels is when they're inflamed. The plaque is actually the fireman putting out the fire. And if we don't have fire, if we don't have inflammation in our body doesn't need to go put that out, calm that down. So yeah, good question. How, the body has to keep a level of glucose in our blood. It's how we function. But we've gone way beyond that. That earlier picture of the train with just a few people on the platform, that's our body. That's how it functions. But none of us are in that shape. Yes. I eat keto at every restaurant. I have not found a restaurant when I tell them I'm on the ketogenic diet that won't bring me ketogenic food. Because this is what ketogenic food is. You go to, where's that bison place you take me to? Ted's? You go to Ted's, and I tell them, they've taken me there before. I want a bison burger, no bun, and I want steamed broccoli. It's all ketogenic. You go to Super Salad. You get a salad, you get a high-fat dressing, you put meat on there, there's your salad. You go to, I'm trying to think. I even go to Taco Cabana. I don't even know if you have them here, but it's like a taco place. I get their roasted chicken that's the best on the planet. And then they throw some lettuce, tomato on there for me. I haven't found a place I couldn't eat. Even Olive Garden. Now, Italian and Mexican are tough, but I live in New Mexico, so let me tell you. I go to a Mexican restaurant, I order fajitas. It's all grilled meat and vegetables and peppers and onions. No tortilla, please. Haven't had a problem. Even Olive Garden will bring you, they have this apricot chicken. I tell them to leave the apricot glaze off and bring me that great salad of theirs, no croutons. It's really easy. Now, as far as the other question you had was, how much do I think you'll be able to reduce your Parkinson's meds? I have no clue. That's why I'm doing the research. I would love to see that somebody was able to reduce their meds. Wow, that's why this research needs to be done. There haven't been any studies on it that I could find. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping if your symptoms improve and you can drop your dosage, so in your pre-study appointment, I'm going to say, how much carbidopa you take and when do you take it, how often? In your post-study, I'm going to interview, how much are you taking? Were you able to reduce it? That's going to help people with Parkinson's. So that's what I'm hoping. Really good question. Another question, yeah. The what sugars? Oh, so the question is, so if we're not using sugar, can we use artificial sweetener? So, been a lot more studies done on artificial sweeteners and neurodegenerative disease. The only one that is showing that it doesn't have as much of an impact is stevia. It's the only acceptable artificial sweetener that I'm going to allow you to use. Now, eventually, they may find that stevia as well. You try to get the raw stevia. Better yet, grow your own stevia plant. That's what I'm going to try to do, and see if you can make your own. What's interesting is, what was that? Oh, monk fruit's okay. The problem with monk fruit is they're adding erythritol to all of it. So you got to really watch the erythritol. Erythritol is great for oral health, but it doesn't do a lot for your body. So the monk fruit is still not as acceptable. The raw stevia is just the stevia leaf. And that's the one that they're finding is less of a problem. I use it. I have to use something in my coffee. So that's what I'm using is the stevia, the raw stevia. Good question about artificial sweeteners. Yes. So eggs, do we use just the whites or the yolks? So again, I always defer to the good Lord because he knows what he was doing. What is an egg? It creates a being. The yolk is a vital part of what we need. It has the perfect balance of fats and proteins. I'm here to tell you that the research does not support that the cholesterol you eat ends up in your veins. That was never true. It has never been true, and it's been perpetrated upon us. It's not biochemically true. Cholesterol in eggs is a total biochemical different makeup than the cholesterol in your arteries. So if you're going to eat eggs, get rid of the white, eat the whole thing. Don't just do egg whites. No, because your brain is how much of a percentage of cholesterol? 85%, that's right. So are we going to starve our bodies of something that our brain needs? That's why we're in this fix. Good point. So really good question about eggs. Eat the whole thing and eat lots of them. Eggs are probably God's most perfect, eggs and breast milk are God's most perfect foods because they are completely designed to sustain life, right? The egg sustains the life of the chick till it's born, yes? The breast milk sustains the life of the newborn. I mean, if you're not going to believe all this other talk, look at the basics of creation, really. So great talk. I eat a lot of eggs. We raise our own chickens, and I probably eat, I don't know, 12 eggs a week, probably more. And the true test, here's another thing I'm going to throw out. The gold standard that came out in 2018 of testing whether you have cardiovascular disease is the coronary artery calcium scan. It is a heart scan, it's a CT scan, it's about $100. You don't have to be referred. Places in Colorado Springs do it. You go in and it's 10 minutes and you lay there and you get a score and it says, how do your arteries look? And after eating 12 eggs a week and 80% fat per day, low carb, 7 years, I have a CAC score of 0. So does Julie. That means I am 0 likely to have a cardiac event. And I eat high fat and I'm very strict. So the CAC score, something you can all request, is the only thing that should ever determine if you're put on a statin drug. If you have a CAC score above 100, you should be on a statin drug. If you have had 1 heart attack, you should be on a statin drug. Otherwise, no. And women, we better not get on a statin drug. It is so much worse for women. I had 20 years of fibromyalgia. And my fibromyalgia was totally because I was on a statin. I stopped the statin. I don't have it anymore. I power lift 85 pounds. So, you know, men, you have a slightly better benefit with statins, but it's only if A, and this is the American College of Cardiologists, A, you have a CAC score over 100, or B, you've had 1 heart attack. then you need to be on a statin. Good, really good question. I love this group because you always ask me such good questions. There's a lot to learn. Yes. So it's interesting about grass-fed eggs. They're everywhere. I buy them from my Kroger sometimes in the winter when my chickens are all molting. They have grass-fed eggs in just about every grocery store. Look for the grass-fed ones. That's what it says. Cage-free is another term they use. Cage-free, grass-fed. If you have both of those things on the eggs. Well, cage-free is better, but it's not necessarily grass-fed. But if that's all you can find, do that. The cage-free still are fed grains in a lot of places. Now, realize there's also a difference between certified organic and organic. Try to get certified organic if you can. So they're everywhere. What's interesting is we were just in Kroger yesterday. They have a whole section of keto snacks. I had a keto breakfast I bought at Kroger yesterday. Our King Supers, yeah. We call them Kroger down there, Smith's, whatever. But you can find it everywhere. And you know what? If your favorite grocery store doesn't have it, you trot up to the manager and you say, this is what I want, and they'll get it for you. I was in Sam's Club one time, and I walked through their meats, and I went, there is not one bit of organic meat here. And I went to the manager, and I said, you know what? A number of us are doing better for our health, and I don't think Sam's wants to lose. I said, I'm going to go over to Sprouts and buy my meat, but I'd rather buy it here. You know what? My Sam's has a huge section of organic meat now. I don't know if that was just from me, probably not, but she did say, yeah, we've been getting more requests for that. You know, you're the consumer. You can tell your stores what you need. And it's interesting, just in King Supers yesterday, there's all this keto-friendly meat. My entire breakfast this morning had 3 carbs. And that's pretty darn good and I had egg and steak and cheese in an omelet. It was fine. So, you know, do real food when you can. Go to farmers markets, you know, try to get fresh produce, do what you can. But interestingly, Dr. Westman at Duke serves a very low income population. They don't have the money to buy a lot of this stuff. He's still having good results. Okay, if all you can do is eat at McDonald's, go eat at McDonald's. Get the patty and the lettuce and the tomato, leave off the bun, get a salad. So you can really eat keto anywhere. It's not that hard. You just have to think meat, fish, poultry, eggs, anything green. And you should be able to really eat anywhere. Joe.
I was just going to say that I'm finding, because I've been low carb for years, I'm finding that it's very easy in more and more hamburger joints to get just the patty and not get charged for the whole sandwich. They will charge them, especially McDonald's. They will charge for, I asked them for 2 quarter-pound patties, and they charged me like $1 something a piece.
So she was saying that even at McDonald's and many restaurants, you tell them, I want the burger without the bun, and they'll actually charge you less. They know people are trying to work on their health. So literally, I have not found, I even went to a Vietnamese place, and you know how you know, Thai food, Vietnamese food, yeah, Asian food is. And I told him, I want your grilled beef, Szechuan, whatever it is. Don't put the sauce on it. And bring me a bowl of your egg drop soup. I mean, you can really figure it out. It's amazing how you can figure it out. Interesting thing is too, you won't want the other stuff. You know, after all these years of being on it, I don't crave it at all. It doesn't interest me at all to eat cake or donuts or whatever. So you begin to lose your addiction. Sugar has been proven biochemically to have the same chemical pathway in the brain as cocaine does. They're handled the same way. And so it's no wonder we're all addicted to sugar. I mean, it's biochemically, our brain craves it. So, yeah. Yeah. So when we talked about the calories self-limiting, what I meant and neglected to mention was that the reason the calories are self-limiting is you are not hungry. You don't have that drive to eat. Nobody ever proved that we have to eat 3 meals a day. Nobody ever proved that. That was a creation in the 60s. And there's no reason why some of us couldn't benefit from fasting. There's a lot of literature on the effects of intermittent fasting and the benefits, because what does fasting do? It ups your natural ketones in your blood. It increases your level of nutritional ketosis. And so chemotherapy is now proven to be more effective if you fast 24 hours before your chemo dose. And why is that? Cancer cells don't like no glucose. Cancer cells thrive on glucose. Cancer cells cannot live in the presence of ketones. So anybody on chemotherapy whose neurologist has not recommended the ketogenic diet, I would change neurologists. I mean, oncologists. I will say that right out, because the ketogenic diet has been used in oncology for many years for better outcomes. Yes. So the question is about indigestion, chronic indigestion. And I'm telling you what, I was the Tums Malox queen. In fact, I was diagnosed with 4 peptic ulcers 8 years ago. Talk about GERD and reflux and all of that business. Yeah. It's gone, and I think the reason it's gone is because this diet reduces general body inflammation. So your stomach isn't having to crank out all this acid all the time. Another thing, and if you're in the study and on the diet and you email me and you say, hey, my indigestion isn't quite better, then I have you add a couple teaspoons of lemon juice to your water every day. And you can get off the Pepcid and the Prevacid and the Nexium and all of that actually sets up more problems in your stomach than it does good. So you're off and on times. So the question is, would it improve your off times, your on times? That's what we're trying to show. That's what this study will show. Part of the UPDRS, you talk about how much during the day you're off, how much during the day you're on, when you're, and people with Parkinson's understand what this means. What I'm hoping, one thing I would like to see is that it totally changes some of that for you. I can't predict what that will be. It's one of the reasons I'm doing the study. These are really good questions. Because if we can show that something as easy as nutrition, how simple, I mean, it really is simple, can actually improve your quality of life and your function on a daily basis, wow, how powerful that is. And you will be contributing to the body of research for people with Parkinson's all over the world. This is a global study. So, to me, it's a win-win. Do you have to change what you're eating? Yes, you do. Do you have to be pretty strict? Yes, you do. It's 12 weeks. I didn't start the study now because over the holidays, good luck, This ain't happening. So the study is supposed to start mid-January. It'll go to before Easter. And I'll tell you, if you hit it hard, you might just see some benefit. If you don't see any benefit in your Parkinson's symptoms, let's just say my symptoms are the same after 12 weeks, but you are no longer pre-diabetic, you no longer have high blood pressure, you no longer have high triglycerides, You have better protective cholesterol. Your inflammatory factors have improved. I'm going to call that a success. I'm hoping, my hypothesis is that it will also improve your Parkinson's symptoms. So that's my hypothesis. I'm hoping that you can help me prove it. Yes, Julie. Right. Right. So the question is, yeah. So what is the difference between ketoacidosis and nutritional ketosis? Ketoacidosis is a chemical reaction in the body where your ketones are above 10 plus. That happens to people who are diabetic, whose sugars are way up there in the 500s. Nutritional ketosis, your ketones are between 0.5 and 3. So do you see the difference? And anybody's physician who doesn't know the difference between nutritional ketosis and ketoacidosis, you need a new physician. This is a basic. This is med school 101. So your ketones on the ketogenic diet will register between 0.5 and 3. To be in ketoacidosis, you have to be above 10. And you won't get there on the ketogenic diet. Unless you don't adjust your insulin, those with diabetics, who are diabetics, then you might. So that's how important it is. Those with diabetes, I'm going to watch you like a hawk. But really good point. The difference between ketoacidosis and nutritional ketosis is the difference between the anthill out here and Mount Everest. Does that make sense? They're not even in the same ballpark. And you're going to be testing it every week. I'll know what your ketones are. Good points, really good points. Other questions? Yes. So the point is, the question was, what if other family members want to do this? I say if the whole family's doing it, you're going to be successful. And Dr. Phillips' book that I'm going to be giving you has 1,000,000 trillion recipes in it. For those of you caregivers who love to cook, there's some great recipes in there. Now, some of the stuff you can only get in New Zealand, but you could find our equivalent up here. I have a no-cook food plan for you. I don't really cook. So those of you who live alone, you don't cook, I have a no-cook plan for you. So if you can grill a piece of meat, you can do this study. If you can't grill a piece of meat, if you can throw a piece of meat in a skillet, you can do this study. So you don't have to cook. And those of you gourmets out there who love to try new stuff, so I would encourage the whole family to do it. Caregivers, your role is to stay as healthy as you possibly can. What will your spouse or family member do without you if you don't stay healthy? So I have one couple that I'm consulting with now. He does it, 1 out of 40. He doesn't have Parkinson's, but he has significant spinal degeneration, lots of medical conditions. She was, pretty healthy. She had a few medical conditions. She did it with him. She's completely cured. She doesn't have any medical conditions at all. And now she can help him. Unfortunately, he stayed on it really strict for a month. He was able to walk around the block for the first time in 20 years on this dietary approach, but he missed his ice cream and his donuts and his cake and his pies, and he went back to it. She stayed on it. She's hiking and biking and doing all these things she hasn't been able to do. So I would encourage caregivers. Now, caregivers, we're not going to be supplying you with the strips to check your ketones and glucose. If you want to buy your own strips, you are welcome to. You can use your family member's meter. That's excellent. You can track your own health. Makes a lot of sense. So those of you who are spouses, caregivers, significant others, you can do this with your family member. It would only be beneficial to you. Excellent. Last question. Excellent. I wanted to say thank you for the 13 people who have stayed on through the question and answers online. We will be posting this link. Thank you so much for your attention. Here are some of my references. I have more. I'm going to stop sharing. Again, really nice to see everybody. And I'm going to close the chat and stop recording.